Welcome to The Culture Bar, a panel discussion podcast exploring, dissecting, and shedding light on important topics in the arts and music world which matter to you. Welcome to Creative Iceland, a special The Culture Bar mini podcast series focusing on the creative scene in Iceland. I am Arna Margrét Jónsdóttir from HarrisonParrott, and I will be your host on this series, where I will be speaking with fellow Icelanders about various topics related to the creative scene in Iceland. For this episode, we will explore cultural activities for children at concert venues, focusing on Harpa Concert Hall and Conference Center. We will go over the importance of children's culture, look into recent policy changes around children's cultural activities at subsidized concert venues, and learn about cultural activities for, with, and by children taking place at Harpa. So, welcome Svanhildur and Ingibjörg, and thank you for joining me for this podcast. Can I please ask you to tell us a bit about yourself? Maybe we can start with you, Svanhildur.
Yes, thank you. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you for inviting me to take part. So I'm the director of Harpa Concert Hall and Conference Center. Harpa just celebrated its 10th anniversary last year, so it's a very sort of young venue. I've been here for 5 years. In my previous life, before I came to Harpa, I was a director of culture and tourism for the city of Reykjavik for about a decade. So I've been working in arts and culture for 35 years, I guess.
Wow, amazing. Thank you. And Ingibjörg?
Yeah, hi. I'm Ingibjörg. I'm a musician, workshop leader, and the project manager for children's cultural events in Harpa Concert Hall. I quite recently took that job, but I've worked at Harpa Concert Hall for many years. I'm a person with many hats and many projects, so I've worked as a tour guide. I've done music workshops for kids in Harpa and done quite a lot of jobs there, so I know that place pretty well. But now I took over this job, and my goal is to kind of supervise and help the children's cultural events in Harpa to be in front, to bring families in and children to Harpa. But otherwise, I've just worked with children for many, many years, taught them in music schools, in workshops, and also I worked at the national radio and television for many years doing culture podcasts like this one for kids.
Great, thank you. I think we will just start off with one question about how you would define children's culture, and why do you think that cultural activities are important for children?
Wow, that's a very important and a big question. Well, I think if you just go to the traditional or sort of accepted definition of children's culture, it's the threefold part, isn't it? It's the culture for children, with children, and by children. Mm-hmm. So I think this is how we approach it, at least in Harpa. Yeah. We have all kinds of events here that are for children, and that's, whether it's plays or concerts or whatever that is geared towards that group of audience. So children are there basically to see and listen, but not to participate. And then it's the part that is with children. And that's what we have been moving more towards in the last 3 to 4 years. And then obviously culture by children, when children are the doers, the executors. They are the core, the key participants in it. So that's how we approach it, at least here in Harpa. And for the second part of the question, whether it's important, it is incredibly important. And maybe we will go into that a little bit later, why we here in Harpa are really putting it at the forefront and investing in educational and experiential programming for children and families.
Just aside from being a safe place to explore, to enjoy, to kind of express themselves, the culture is also just strengthening imagination. It gives them tools that work in various social settings, and also like what we are working towards mostly is creating this quality time for families, for parents and children to bond and be active participants in culture together to create memories.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think also, I mean, what we try to do here is that we try as far as we possibly can to make these events or programming free of charge, so that, you know, the threshold isn't that high. Of course, there are some events here in Harpa, whether it's sort of children's play or children's concerts that have an admission fee, but what the house is doing in its own name is more or less free of charge, because we want to reach really the broader group. We want to reach children who are perhaps more at the fringe, whether it's immigrant children or children that are less advantaged. And this is an absolute key element in doing that.
Yes. Yeah, I think this threefolded definition, is really good. And it's really interesting to hear that you're kind of expanding for the children to with and by.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
really, really exciting. So what role do you think concert venues, especially those that are subsidized, should play when it comes to cultural activities for children?
In my opinion, I think they should be set an example for other venues, whether they're subsidized or not, to bring professionalism into the cultural environment. Because children, they feel if things are not at the standard, that it should be. Professional artists should be involved. They should be working with the children. So I think first and foremost, an example, setting a good example and being open and accepted, just like Svanhildur was talking about.
Well, I mean, talking on behalf of a venue that is subsidized, I think, well, before COVID, we would have something like 25% subsidy from our owners. We are owned by the state and City of Reykjavik, state being a majority owner. So we're a public limited company. We're not a cultural institution, we're a public limited company, but with taxpayers' money. So we're owned by the public. And as such, I think a venue like Harpa has really great responsibilities. From my perspective, and this is how I have approached at least things since I came here, is that we have a duty to create value and worth. And that is cultural worth, it's economical worth and value, and it's societal. I mean, it's the value for the society that we are a part of and we're a player in. And as I said, that we are owned by the nation, we're owned by the public. So for a house like Harpa or similar concert halls that are owned partly or even totally by the public, I think there is a huge responsibility to really address issues that engage children. And like I said earlier, just sort of try and get rid of these thresholds and these barriers and what is stopping children and their families from enjoying culture and participating in culture. At least this is a responsibility we take quite seriously and are, as I said, investing in to be even more active and more productive in that area. And we feel that our owners, we feel that our owners are very supportive of this policy. We sort of had a strategy-based building in 2018-19, and children's culture and focus on families is very much a part of that. So it's out there. I mean, it's basically in our manifesto. This is what we want to do and need to do.
Because children are also, part of our population. They are owners of Harpa and other subsidized concert venues. So they should have the stage. That's also something that we're working towards, to give them the stage, to make them feel that they own and are a part of Harpa.
Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah.
Following up a bit on the policy and thinking about, has there been any official policy change in the past years when it comes to cultural activities for children at arts and cultural venues in Iceland, both kind of at the national and regional level?
Without a doubt. As I said, my sort of background is working for the city. I was a director of culture there, and during my time there, we've started the Reykjavik Children's Culture Festival. That was the first festival of that kind in Iceland. That has now expanded both to other municipalities in the capital region, and we see other local communities having their own children's festival. So that is really sort of picking up. And on the sort of governmental level, there is definitely a policy shift because there has been a special fund been created. I think it has been in operation for the last 3 years or 4 years, but 3 years, 4 years. In the last few years, anyway, the Children's Culture Fund, where it's actually funding, and you can apply once a year, for a project that involve this sort of threefold, perhaps, approach that I mentioned earlier. It hasn't got a lot of money, but it's still a huge difference from what it was before.
Also, in just general, Iceland has committed to the Convention of the Rights for Children by the UN. And in that way, of course, arts and culture, they have their special, place in that convention. But also just generally, people are trying to, when they're working with children, always putting that first. Where are we? How do I put this? How can we make this convention, stand in this project? So like when people are applying for the Children's Culture Fund by the government, they are using it, this convention as a part of their project to show how they are taking the children's rights seriously.
Absolutely.
And the rights for culture and education and everything else that follows.
Yeah. And just when you mentioned this is incredibly important, what you mentioned about the Convention for the Rights of the Child, that in this special space that we opened here in Harpa earlier this year, it's called Sound Heavens. Right?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Hljóðhimnar in Icelandic. It's a beautiful space. And that is actually being inspired by that convention, by the rights of children to enjoy culture. And I think that's really, really beautiful. So yeah, that's a very important part.
Yeah. So maybe because you started to talk a bit about what you were doing at the venue, and you mentioned the Hljóðhimnar space, which I have been to with my 2-year-old son, and we really enjoyed it. Maybe if we can just speak a bit about the activities that you're offering children at the venue and how they came about and how they have been received by the children.
If I begin very shortly about how it came about, and then I think Ingibjörg Fríða knows much more than I about exactly what's happening there on a daily basis. It came about as a part of our 10th anniversary celebrations. I mean, and COVID, to be honest, COVID was incredibly challenging for us, like every venue in the world, I guess. But we didn't, we were lucky in the sense that we didn't close the house for more than 5 weeks during the whole period of 2 years. So that's really, we've been fortunate in that sense. And we've also been fortunate in that we have enjoyed the support of our owners in funding some capital projects, in changing some key things on the ground floor in the foyer, and also investing in this space. So it started out as a small idea that was not supposed to cost much, and it ended up being, well, a beautiful, much bigger and integrate idea and project, we really see it as the sort of crown jewel when it comes to children's culture in Harpa. But regarding the activities, Ingibjörg, you should sort of, this.
Yeah, so Hljóðhimnar is open every day. So an interactive musical experimentation room for children and families. And every member or every, resident of Harpa has its own place in Hljóðhimnar. So you can get to know the Icelandic Opera, the Reykjavik Big Band, the Iceland Symphony Orchestra, And then Maximus Musicus, this tiny musical mouse that lives in Harpa. He's lived with the symphony orchestra in 2 venues now, first in the University Movie Theatre, and then he moved with them to Harpa. And this tiny mouse, he's a story, what do you say, it's like a character in books by Hallfríður Ólafsdóttir. She was the principal flute player in the Iceland Symphony Orchestra. She recently passed away, but Maximus Musicus lives on everywhere, and we focus a lot on him and what he does. And he's a very curious mouse. He goes around Harpa, he checks in on rehearsals, and he's always there. And especially if children are in Harpa, they can always listen for and try to find him. And so we've created events around him, but then also just generally with the Reykjavik Big Band, with the opera, we are curating events focused for children. So to kind of encourage them to make children's culture a part of their yearly program. So for example, we did a swing concert ball for children and families with the Reykjavik Big Band recently, just children and parents dancing together. It was beautiful. And then we have a lullaby concert by the Icelandic Opera in the fall. The Symphony Orchestra, they do regular children hours where families are encouraged to come and listen to music. And like Svanhildur said, all of this is free of charge, and we try to reach out and advertise as well as we can, just to bring in more people. So Hljóðhimnar is always open. You can always come there and experiment every day, regardless of events or not. And then we have this program throughout the year, mostly in the weekends, when we have encouraged people to bring their children to Harpa.
So I think I should mention that there was a group of fantastic, absolutely fantastic, well, I should say they're all young women. I don't think, I'm being unfair to say that. It's young women, fantastic young women, in a group called Thikjó. So they are really they have the credit for this, for basically having the idea, the design, and they sort of pulled together, along with a great project manager from Harpa, who was working on it last year, pulled together these residents that Ingibjörg is talking about. So it's really connected to the core of Harpa. Mm-hmm. And it's a sustainable space, in a sense that we do not have to have someone there all the time to receive the children and tell them what to do, so they can really touch and move things around and have fun and also relax. So it's not sort of a high voltage activity space, And their inspiration, Thikjó is the design team's inspiration, in addition to using the Convention for the Rights of the Child, is the ear. Mm-hmm. So it's anything from the inner ear, the eardrum, out to, all the different parts of the ear. So you have that sort of journey throughout the space, and every item that you can try and experiment with is somehow a connection to the function of the ear. So it's a great, clever, and inspiring concept that they used.
And also, just as a music teacher, when I came in there for the first time, I saw hundreds of possibilities in music education. So I've been reaching out also to the University of Arts and the music teacher community to introduce them to the space, and how they can, even create some projects in the school connected to Hljóðhimnar or something that's in there, and then they can bring the group to Harpa just on a school day when the house is not as busy. They can take their time and so it also kind of Hljóðhimnar kind of flows out into the community in this way.
Yeah, it's brilliant to hear how you're kind of getting the residents together, and then as you mentioned, to also reach out to outside organizations to come in. So it's kind of creating a hub for this scene in Harpa. Mm-hmm. Also, just quickly, if you can talk a bit about the anniversary song for Harpa, because this was a brilliant idea. So
thank
you. If we can quickly discuss that and what that involved.
Yeah, it's like Svanhildur was saying, this started out so small and was supposed to be so small and you know, cute and short, but ended up being quite a big project. And this song that you mentioned, I think the song and hljóðhimnar, it talks to each other so well because it happened in the same year in COVID. And I was working on the song with my husband, who's also a workshop leader and music teacher. We were working on the song and hljóðhimnar was being born in a similar time. So it's like the idea was there. We were just grabbing it in different ways. So the women that were designing hljóðhimnar, they had a group of children, starting out with them to experiment. How would we like this space to be? And then they took the ideas and formed something professional. So a working relationship between the kids and professional artists. It's exactly the same way as we created this song, the anniversary song for Harpa. So we started out reaching out to kids who wants to take part in writing a new anniversary song for Harpa. And we focused on 10-year-old kids that are the same age as Harpa. And we got a lot of applications. We chose a group of 10 kids, 10-year-olds. And then we worked with them in workshops, me and Siggi, my husband, creating ideas, you know, what do we like about Harpa? What is Harpa to you? What have you experienced? How would you describe it? And then we worked on lyrics. They were all musicians, kids, they were playing their instruments, they brought their instruments, and we asked them to compose lines. They sent us the material, and then we, being, you know, professionals in that environment, took and puzzled together a song that we then brought again to them, and they finished with us. Then we decided to go even bigger and involve 70 or 80 other 10-year-old kids. So we reached out to a band, like a brass band, choirs, and brought together a group of 80 kids that recorded and performed the song together. And then we did a whole music video and released it on the anniversary of Harpa in May of last year. So really? I think, the song and hljóðhimnar, it was designed in a similar way at the same time. So it was just like the idea was waiting there to be, you know, collected and used.
And this song, I believe you won an award for this project.
Yeah.
We got a marketing award, surprisingly.
Advertising and marketing award. Yeah, it was quite surreal.
Good one. Yes,
yeah.
That was surreal.
So
but it was, I mean, yeah. I know, just to mention that with the anniversary year, of course, we wanted to do all kinds of things and sort of big events and whatever, but COVID always stopped us in our tracks. So it was so beautiful to have a project like this that would sort of just blossom and you could really share the joy, you know, and the celebration by recording this and sharing it on our social media and so forth. Yeah, it's one of the anniversary. We got beautiful gifts for our anniversary, but this is one of the gifts that I think I'm most fondest of, you know.
Yeah. The best part for us working there was that the building was totally empty for a lot of the time when we were working on it. So we could really give the kids the whole stage. We could give them the whole building just to kind of spread out and do nice music videos and so on. So it was like a lucky thing in an unlucky situation.
Brilliant. Thinking maybe looking at also other venues. Do you think that concert venues are generally accessible and inviting for children and families? And yeah, if they could perhaps be more forward-thinking and progressive when it comes to programming cultural activities for children?
Well, I think it's very difficult to generalize in this because you have absolutely wonderful venues that are top of the range, very ambitious. They have got educational programming and all kinds of children and you know, programming for young children and for children and young adults. Let's put it this way. I can mention Philharmonie as an example. I've been there several times and have met with the people who are in charge of their educational programming, and it's fantastic. I mean, the facilities are great, and it's very much a high priority thing in how they operate. And I could mention some others as well. But then you get other venues that are perhaps older and more traditional, and they are not focused as much on this part. They are more set in their ways. There are other priorities. But I have to say, though, because Harpa is, and I am on behalf of Harpa, a member of, really two networks, and sort of a semi-member of the third, and it's the Nordic Konserthúsráð. It's like a network of the Nordic houses. It's a family of halls, which is an international network of venues that have been acoustically designed by Artec, now Arup. And that's an interesting network because it connects houses from, as I said, all over the world. And then we are very good friends with ECHO, the European Concert Hall organization. And what I have heard and sensed in all these different platforms is the recognition and the need to really develop in this direction. The audience development, to really be progressive, to be open, incorporate new technology, because you need to be relevant. You need to be relevant for these young, new audiences. Otherwise, you die. And there's been, I think, a long-standing worry that classical music has got a bit of a problem. It seemed like they predicted the death of the book. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but you need to innovate. You need to be on your toes and open, as I said, and brave, to always be relevant to the young people that are coming up. So it's a long answer to say some are really with it and on it, and some are not, but those who are not, they need to be, and I think they recognize it, most of them.
Yes. Just to sum up, kind of, and I'm gonna have one final question for you. If you maybe touched a bit upon it during the conversation, but if you can share your future vision on cultural activities for children at Harpa, and kind of then what steps need to be taken to achieve that.
Well, from my point of view, and this is what we have been working towards, I want Harpa to be not on the top 10 list, but on the top 3 list, top of mind when families think of what are we going to do this weekend, how do we want to spend our precious time that we have together, where are we going to go? And I want Harpa to be obviously number 1, but to be realistic, at least top 3. Mm-hmm. So we mentioned earlier the importance that Ingibjörg Fríða said, that these young children, they have the sense that Harpa is their house, that they have an ownership. Mm-hmm. And just to see these really small children, like the kindergarten kids, come here, mm-hmm. and how happy they are, and then you see them maybe 2 years later, and they say, they are like at home. Mm-hmm. They recognize, so they know the building more or less. I think that is really rewarding, and then they are relaxed. They feel comfortable, and when they get a bit older, perhaps develop a sense of pride in owning, being a part of the ownership of this building. Mm-hmm. So we want to expand. This is why Ingibjörg Fríða we just created this sort of new job, did that a few months ago. And that's something that I want to see as an integral part of what we do here in Harpa in our own programming.
I agree. There's not much to add to this, just, to make them feel that they can come to Harpa and safely express themselves within the walls of Harpa, that they are heard, that they are seen. And then as they grow, that Harpa will, be a part of their lives. Maybe, they get married in Harpa. Maybe they, I don't know, come, if they want to give somebody the gift of music, they will choose a concert in Harpa and give that as a birthday present. And, that Harpa will follow people from young age and up.
Thank you so much for participating in this conversation. A lot of really great ideas, and it's been brilliant to hear what you've been doing at Harpa. And I wish you all the best with everything going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Svanhildur Konráðsdóttir is the Director of Harpa Concert Hall and Conference Center in Reykjavík, Iceland. She has over 20 years of successful experience in the cultural sector in Iceland and abroad. In recent years, Svanhildur was the Director of Culture and Tourism of Reykjavík, responsible for Reykjavík City cultural, artistic, and tourism activities. Svanhildur's background is in culture, journalism, and media, and she is the author of 2 books. Ingibjörg Fríða Helgadóttir is a musician, creative workshop leader, and children's culture project manager at Harpa Concert Hall and Conference Center. She has diverse education and experience in various fields of music and a degree in creative music communication from the Iceland University of the Arts. In the last years, she has focused on children's culture, creating and hosting cultural podcasts for children and families at the Icelandic National Television and Radio, teaching and performing music to and for children, and leading music improv and composition workshop in various settings. Thank you for listening to the Culture Bar podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and a review.